Good morning, everyone. I'm going to go ahead and call this meeting 7 of the Interim Joint Committee on Education to order. Before we get into the business of the day, I'm sure that you have heard the news that Governor Julian Carroll passed away yesterday. I had the pleasure, actually, when he was in the state senate, we both represented Anderson County together. So I had the pleasure of serving with him. So if you could join me, and let's just take a moment of silence in memory of Governor Carroll and prayers for his family. Amen. Thank you so much. I will note that Co-Chair West cannot attend today. He had a death in his family as well, so he will not be attending today as well. So let's please remember him and his family on the loss. He lost an uncle suddenly. Right now, let's, Mariah, please, before I say that, remind everybody, please silence your cell phones. I've already silenced mine. So everybody in the audience and all the members. Now, Mariah, please call the roll.
Senator Carroll. Senator Funke Frohmeyer.
Present.
Senator Givens. Senator Higdon. Senator Meredith.
Present.
Senator Neal. Senator Stivers. Senator Thomas. Senator Tishner. Present. Senator Williams. Senator Wilson.
Here.
Senator Wise.
Present.
Representative Baker.
Here.
Representative Ballman. Representative Bojanowski.
Here.
Representative Brown. Representative Callaway.
Present.
Representative Decker.
Present.
Representative Jackson.
Present.
Representative Lewis. Representative Massaroni.
Present.
Representative McCool. Representative Rayburn.
Here.
Representative Rawlings.
Here.
Representative Raymond.
Here.
Representative Riley. Representative Timoney. Representative Truitt.
Here.
Representative Weber.
Here.
Representative Wilner. Co-Chair West. Co-Chair Tipton.
Here. Any members have any introductions or comments before we start? Representative Callaway.
Thank you, Chairman. I just want to welcome Superintendent Dr. Jesse Bacon from Bullitt County Public Schools with us today. Thank you.
Good to see you, Dr. Bacon. I used to represent part of Bullitt County. Good to have you with us today. Representative Bojanowski.
All right, so I'd like to welcome Dr. Elizabeth Dinkins, who's on a panel, and she was also on my dissertation committee. So welcome, Dr. Dinkins.
Okay. Good to have you here. Any other members? At this time, we do have a quorum. The minutes, you should have received the minutes ahead of time, and they're in their packet. Do I have a motion for approval of the minutes?
Motion.
Have a motion. Is there a second? And a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Any opposed, no. The motion carries. We'll get down into our business of the day. If you will recall about last year about this time and during session, we were having a lot of discussion about the teacher shortage and the need for additional teachers in our classroom. And that's really the reason that we're having this conversation today, is to take an in-depth look at our licensure process for our teachers, teacher preparation process, and just get that information. And so I'll give you the opportunity to ask questions to see if there are any policy decisions that need to be made going forward. So at this time, the first item on our business is a discussion of traditional and alternative certification. So if the folks from EPSB will come forward, if you will please pull those microphones close to you. Make sure that green light is on, and if you will identify yourself for the record, and after you do that, I will swear you in, and then we can begin.
Good morning, Cassie Trueblood, Counsel for the Education Professional Standards Board.
Good morning, Dr. Melissa Diebel, the KDE KBE Academic Program Manager for the Office of Educator Licensure and Effectiveness.
Good morning, everyone. Byron Darnell, Associate Commissioner, Office of Educator Licensure and Effectiveness.
Okay, please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you so much, and please make sure those microphones are pulled close to you. I apologize, that is an issue we have here, and just proceed. Thank you.
Well, thank you all for your time, and most importantly, I want to wish everyone a wonderful and safe, enjoyable holiday season. We'll just jump right into the agenda items. Today, I am accompanied by General Counsel Cassie Trueblood, who will review the options for licensure in the Commonwealth.
Good morning. Thank you for having us and for giving us this opportunity. The items that we have been asked to present.
Cassie, could you pull that, make sure that green light is on and pull that.
It is. I'm just a little
Yeah,
too
ju-
soft-spoken. this
Yeah,
morning.
just, I apologize, but I'm hard of hearing, so
Is that better?
it's better. Thank
Okay.
you.
I will try to keep the volume up. But the topics that we've been asked to share this morning on educator certification and preparation, those fall under the purview of the Education Professional Standards Board, which is created in statute. In KRS 161028, the EPSB is given the responsibility and authority for setting the standards and requirements for obtaining and maintaining a teaching certificate in the state of Kentucky. Specifically, the board is made up of 17 members that represent different areas of the education community. We have 9 teacher members, 2 administrators, 3 representatives from higher education, 1 school board member, and then 2 ex officio members. Our board is actually scheduled to meet today. They graciously pushed the meeting to this afternoon, and we are fortunate to have our board chair, Justin Mitchell, and also one of our EPP representatives, Corinne Murphy, with us today. But when thinking about teacher certification, the process to obtaining a certificate is generally divided into a traditional route to certification or the alternative routes to certification. And traditional is typically what you think of when you're thinking of teacher preparation programs, where an individual is enrolled in a program at a college or university, and these programs can be either at the graduate or undergraduate level. With the undergraduate candidates, these candidates have not yet completed a bachelor's degree and are pursuing a bachelor's degree as part of their teacher preparation program. For the graduate level candidates, they have already completed a bachelor's degree and are now in a master's program, pursuing that master's as well as their teacher preparation. Upon completion of the preparation programs, if they meet the GPA requirements and the assessment requirements, they are eligible for that full teaching certificate. Though we do have alternative routes as well, the majority of initial certifications, so those first-time teaching certificates, are issued through the traditional route. And as you can see with some numbers from the last 5 years, that route is back up the last school year. But 2 things that are often thought of with the traditional route are the field experience hours as well as student teaching. And field experience is a requirement for the candidates to complete 200 hours prior to admission to student teaching. And that 200 hours is tracked by the educator preparation programs at the college and university, and they provide students an opportunity to engage in multiple experiences in the school setting. Those are going to involve working with students, interactions with parents, as well as interacting with school staff, observing in other school settings such as the Family Resource Center, Youth Services Center, observing school board meetings, site-based decision-making meetings. And then upon that completion of the 200 hours, they are eligible to be admitted to student teaching. Student teaching generally occurs during the final semester of the preparation program, and it is defined in statute, and that definition is that it's a period of practice teaching under the direction of staff from the district, as well as supervision from staff from the educator preparation provider. With this, every student teacher is assigned a cooperating teacher who is going to be a qualified teacher at the district level who has a minimum of 3 years of experience. They've completed training on how to be a cooperating teacher. And then there also is a university supervisor who is going to observe that student teacher in the classroom a minimum of 4 times. But the student teaching placement is 70 full days, and it is in the area of certification sought. So for example, if you have a candidate who is pursuing an elementary certification, they are going to be assigned to a cooperating teacher in an elementary classroom and complete their placement there. When you get into the P12 certifications, that's going to be split among the grade levels, and the same for those that are pursuing two different areas of certification. They are going to split those among the areas of certification. But during this time, it is that practice teaching, and so they are assuming a major responsibility for the instruction in the instructional setting. Currently, there is not a stipend for student teachers. However, the EPSB has recently taken action to kind of offset some of the cost of student teaching to those student teachers. You may remember during the pandemic, Kentucky Senate leadership actually sent a letter to the EPSB encouraging them to review a model from West Virginia where student teachers were eligible to serve as emergency substitutes. The board did adopt that during the pandemic and received very strong reviews about that, so have continued with that. And they have also allowed for this year that student teachers can maintain classified employment at the district. So while traditional route is our main route to certification, there are also alternative routes to help recruit individuals to the teaching profession. And the majority of the alternative routes are found in statute in KRS 161048, and that is where the legislature has created 9 routes to certification that are aimed at recruiting quality individuals who may not have pursued a teacher preparation program. We also submitted a report to the Interim Joint Committee at the end of September that details these routes and provides some data on them. And then today we also have provided you with some more in-depth data around the certificates that have been issued for each route. But option 1 is the exceptional work experience route, and this is for candidates who have exceptional work experience in the area of certification sought. The individuals must have a minimum of a bachelor's degree and meet GPA requirements. That is the same GPA requirement as the traditional route. And then they either must have an academic major in the area, or if they do not have that academic major, they have to pass the content area assessment. With the exceptional work experience, originally the statute required a minimum of 10 years, but that was removed in 2017. So there's no longer a set number of years that is required for this route. With option 1, we see this most in the area of chemistry, biology, and business and marketing. Biology, you often see individuals who were previously veterinarians that have now decided that they would like to pursue teaching, and so they are obtaining that certification based on their previous work experience. Option 2 is the district training program, and this was the original route, alternative route to certification. It is a program that occurs at the district level, and so there are requirements for the individuals who can be admitted to this. Again, those individuals have to have a bachelor's degree, an offer of employment in the area of certification, and a passing score on the academic content assessment. The statute also specifies that before they can even take the content assessment, they have to have completed 30 hours or 5 years in that area of certification. Once they meet these requirements, they are eligible to be admitted to the district training program. The requirements for the training program are in a separate statute, but they require 3 phases that the district would oversee. The district has the ability to partner with a college or university. They have to offer 250 hours of instruction, and it is divided into 3 phases where you have supervision, a practicum, and a seminar. This is a very heavy lift for our districts, and we currently do not have any districts that are utilizing this route. In its entirety, it has only ever been utilized by the Jefferson County Schools, and that program was ended in 2017. With the addition of the other routes, as I said, this was the original alternative route, but the addition of the other routes have made it unnecessary. Option 3 is a route for college faculty to pursue certification as a teacher. These individuals must have a master's degree or a doctorate in the area of certification, and they have to have either 5 years of full-time post-secondary teaching experience or the equivalent 90 semester hours, and that 90 semester hours can be part-time or adjunct. And then they do have to have an offer of employment in the area of certification. And we have seen this most in the areas of English, business and marketing, and Spanish, with biology coming in a close fourth. Adjunct certification. This differs from the other routes to certification in that it does not lead to the full professional certificate. This is a 1-year certificate that can be renewed, and it is eligible for part-time employment. Candidates have to meet the requirements for the certificate, and they are not eligible for tenure or for the Kentucky Teachers Retirement. With this route as well, we have seen this in a variety of different settings. We see this a lot with individuals pursuing alternative classroom teaching because, again, it does have to have part-time employment. Option 5, also known as our Troops to Teachers route. This is for the veterans of the armed services who have either been honorably discharged from service or are currently serving and have a minimum of 6 years of honorable service. Candidates for this route have to have a bachelor's degree that meets GPA requirements, and then they either have a major in the area of certification or they have passed the academic content assessment. With this route, we see the majority of candidates are pursuing certification to teach social studies. Option 6 is the most popular of the alternative routes. It is the one that most people are aware of and have had some interaction with because this route goes through our colleges and universities. It enrolls a student in a post-baccalaureate teacher preparation program along with employment as a teacher of record. Candidates do have to have a bachelor's degree and meet GPA requirements, and then they are enrolled in the program and are serving as a teacher of record at a school district. While the candidates are completing this route, they are issued a temporary provisional certificate. Previously, those were limited to an issuance and 2 renewals, but with the last session, Senate Bill 49 extended that so that they can now renew that certificate 4 times to give them a total of 5 years of certification. Unfortunately, due to federal IDEA restrictions, that does not apply to Teachers for Exceptional Children or IECE. Those are still limited to that 3-year period. But with this route, this is overwhelmingly the alternative route that is utilized, and we see it the most in the area of special education for learning and behavior disorders, elementary certification, and interdisciplinary early childhood education. Option 7, this route was added to the statute in 2004. And in its initial days, it was utilized by our colleges and universities for a world language preparation. However, those programs were not long-lived. They did find that option 6 was a better route for that. However, in 2019, the EPSB really looked at this route and looked at the guidelines around it and tried to publicize this route a little bit more. It is an institute route and requires the completion of an institute that is 240 hours for those pursuing elementary or P12 certification, or 180 hours for those with middle or high school. Those hours are also specified in statute about what they are supposed to be preparing in. Candidates for this route do have to have a bachelor's degree, meet GPA requirements. They have to, by statute, pass an admissions assessment before they can be in this route. And then they also have to pass the academic content assessment for the area of certification sought. They will be eligible for full certification upon completion of the institute and mentoring and passage of the additional assessments. Option 8 is our Teach for America route, and the majority of this route is handled through the Teach for America program and completion of that. Some of the training does have to be completed prior to issuance of the initial temporary provisional certificate, and then candidates are eligible for that temporary provisional certificate while they are employed in the district and completing the program. At the completion of that program, that is when they are eligible to pass those content assessments and be issued the full certificate. With option 8, we do see this most often utilized for mathematics, biology, and English. Option 9 is our newest route to certification. This was created during the 2022 legislative session, and it differs from the other routes in that it is a bachelor's level program. It does not carry certification with it while the individuals are in the route. You may remember when this was initially rolled out, there was a lot of pushback and fear that this meant that an individual was going to graduate high school and immediately be certified to teach. That is not the case. This does require that they complete the preparation program at the bachelor's level, but it's an expedited program where they complete that within 3 years. And at the district level, they are also completing mentoring and supervision to help build them for this career. Because this was created in 2022, we do not have any program completers to date, but we do have a number of programs that have already been approved by the EPSB and a few more that are on the agenda for this afternoon. So while those are the statutory routes to alternative certification, I do have some numbers up there for you. Again, the data set that we provided puts a little more information with this in the specific areas of certification that have been issued. But as you can see, option 6 is the overwhelming route to certification. With options 1, 3, and 5, those numbers are always going to be unique individuals from year to year. With option 4, because that is a renewable certificate, those are the number of certificates that have been issued each year, but those could be some of the same individuals from year to year. Same with options 6, 7, and 8, because those are temporary provisional certificates that can be renewed. You can have some overlap where candidates are in those numbers multiple years. But one thing I would like to mention about the alternative routes to certification, with the exception of option 9, the first 8 routes were all created during the Kentucky Teacher Internship Program. So when KTIP was active, that meant that all educators, those prepared through the traditional route, as well as those through the alternative routes to certification, were required to complete that first year of employment through the Teacher Internship Program, where they were receiving mentoring and supervision that was tied to their certificate, and they had to pass KTIP before they could proceed in the profession. And before I wrap up the alternative routes, 2 additional certificates that I'd like to mention for you today. The first is the Interim certificate. This was created by House Bill 319 during the last session. It was non-codified language in that bill that does create a 1-year certificate that's renewable a maximum of 2 times. Currently, it is set to expire in June 30th of 2026. But it does require a minimum of a bachelor's degree and 4 years of work experience in the area of certification sought. Now, there's also requirements that are placed on districts that utilize this, including assigning a mentor teacher. To date, we have only issued 9 interim certificates. We have not had a lot of interest in this route, and I believe part of that is because it does not lead to the full professional certificate, and people that qualify for this route may qualify for another alternative route that would lead to full professional certificates, such as option 1 or option 6. Additionally, those candidates could qualify for the emergency certificate. And an emergency certificate is a 1-year certificate created by statute when a district has no qualified candidates for a certified vacancy. These candidates have to have a bachelor's degree, and that bachelor's degree can be in any area, and a minimum GPA of 2.5. This is an emergency certificate. It does not lead to full certification. In the last session, we did see language that allowed anybody who had an emergency certificate from the previous year to be eligible to be reissued that certificate. The board also expanded upon that at their May meeting to say that any individual who had previously held an emergency certificate, not just those during the last school year, that they could be eligible for reissuance as well. So that was a lot of talking and slides from me.
Could we take a pause here for any questions? But first, I did have one announcement I meant to make to the members. On your agenda, there are several administrative regulations. I know some of the freshman members maybe haven't been through this. We'll get to that in a minute. Those admins are not, you don't have a copy in your packet, but they are online. If you want to review those, you can go there and click that link to review those administrative regulations. We do have a member of questions. Obviously, Cassie, as you know, I probably got some questions. My first question is, I'm thinking about being a teacher, getting started. Maybe I've been in the profession a while, and I try and figure out what my best option is, and I look through all this, and it looks like Greek to me, because it's very complex. Is there a way that we can simplify this? Is there a way that we can do a dashboard for prospective teachers? I'm just throwing ideas out there to help people who are interested have a better concept of what their options are and what qualifications what they might have to do to meet those qualifications.
Yes, sir. So we have, through the Go Teach Kentucky website, we do have some information about the different routes. The EPSB has also, they had a meeting in November where they set goals for the board and for the work of the board. They will vote on those this afternoon, but one of their goals that they discussed in November is really improving communication and improving and publicizing the information that is out there. I do have, and it was included in the report that was provided to you at the end of September, a kind of one page on the alternative routes. Now that is still very small font in front and back to be on that one page, but we are working to provide training, especially for our HR directors, so that they are able to utilize this with prospective candidates as well.
Okay. An additional question. On your number of certificates that are issued, you went back to the 18-19 year. I have looked at some data, maybe a 10-year look back to 12, 13, and am I correct that the number of certificates issued then were far greater than they are today?
I do not have that information in front of me, so I would not be comfortable speaking on that at this time.
Maybe
but
the information I'm looking at is students entering teacher prep programs, but I think it's fair to say we don't have as many people going into the profession now as say we did. And could you get us that data so we can have that look back maybe pre-COVID and see what our numbers are?
Yes, we are happy to get that information to you as well.
I've got a few more questions, but I'll defer to some of our members. Representative Bojanowski.
Thank you. My question is about Teach for America. So we have a $700,000 line item for each year of the current budget for Teach for America. If we only have 29 teachers, that works out to be about $24,137 per teacher per year. Teach for America teachers generally don't stay long-term in education. I understand that quite a few do a couple years and then move on to something else. So we could be spending $50,000 on an individual who may not be a long-term teacher. So are there any other programs where it turns out that we're spending that high of a level of money for teachers? Do you think that money could be better spent for a teacher recruitment program such as Teach Kentucky that really looks for teachers to be long-term teachers? And then do you have any data on the average number of years that a Teach for America teacher teaches?
I do not have the data on the Teach for America teachers. However, I am happy to follow up with Teach for America and provide you with that. In regards to their program, yes, it is a small number of teachers that are certified, but that is impactful for those districts that they are serving. Those are some of your smaller Eastern Kentucky districts in that area. So yes, it is a large item of money, and it is I believe, really the only alternative route that is receiving that level of funding from the legislature. With the Teach Kentucky model, I am somewhat familiar with that in the work that Mr. Claypool has done in Jefferson County and recruiting individuals to come and teach in Jefferson County predominantly through the Option 6 pathway. And I know he does a great job of recruiting candidates for those programs, and I think every district would benefit from a program such as that.
I'd appreciate that data. Thank you
Yes,
very
ma'am.
much.
The next question is from Senator Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And looking at your numbers here, the certificates issued by school year seems to be going up. And of course, I represent Western Kentucky University, and Dean Murphy there is doing a fantastic job. In fact, their enrollment in teaching programs is actually full. It's up. She's doing an amazing job working out with high schools and things like this. I'm wondering if you have information about the other schools of education, where they're at, and projections of what your certifications will be coming up in the next couple of years based on that.
We do. And you're right. There are definitely areas to spotlight of growth, which is awfully encouraging. So thank you for pointing that out. But yeah, we'll be happy to provide you with just a prospectus on the overall entry into the educator programs and the other universities and preparation availabilities.
Thank you. I'd appreciate that, especially as we're looking at the shortages and what we're looking at in the future. I think it would help us in decision making. So
generally, it is not as optimistic in that area, unfortunately. That's not for lack of trying, but I wouldn't categorize that as the norm, if you will.
Right. Thank you.
Senator Funky Fromeyer.
Thank you, Chairman Tipton. Thank you for your presentation. I had the benefit of visiting my largest middle school in my Senate district. And it prompted me to ask the question, is there a formalized process in following to Senator Wilson's question that is offering teacher development programs, that we are looking at middle schoolers and beginning to help guide them on what the development of a teacher starting, 11, 12 years old, because we are seeing pockets of success. Is there anything that will flow throughout Kentucky?
Yeah, absolutely. One of, I think, the great celebrations is with the improvement and interest in what is called Educators Rising. Some may know it as Future Educators of America. It's former nomenclature, but we have chapters all across the Commonwealth, and this is the vehicle for the introduction of those, primarily targeting in your secondary, your high school range, but there is an availability for that to go into the middle level grades, and we have seen some interest in it. And I think, most districts are saying that they can't afford not to. So it has been embraced, and we are seeing the interest, at least in numbers of students participating. So, for example, in March, we will have the annual statewide competition, and it is also a conference. The number of participants in this competition have more than tripled in the last 2 years. So starting at under 300 and now moving toward 600 or above 600. So the interest is definitely growing, and it provides sort of that the platform I believe that you're speaking of, and also the teaching and learning pathway through career and tech education is also offers students in the high school level to begin to utilize those dual credits in an education forward environment, which hopefully ideally they would matriculate on into a post-secondary program to finish their certification. So we definitely have opportunities and models that are working to provide that level of support.
Okay, Senator Fromeyer has a follow-up.
Yeah, just a follow up on that. In the para-educator, I'm not an educator, so I don't understand all of the certification that goes along with a paraeducator. But is that when you talked about the majority of teachers are coming through the university route right now, is there an early point that they're certified, so then they are able to have achieved some level of paraeducator certification? So when they're achieving that 200 hours, there's some significant pay that they can be earning as they're probably paying their way through college and such as well?
So paraeducators are actually a classified position and therefore do not fall to the Education Professional Standards Board. The board only has the authority to issue teaching certificates and certificates for administrators and that other school personnel. Paras would not fall to that.
Yeah, they would be your classified staff at your school districts. I do have a follow-up to Senator Frohmeyer's first question. Last Friday, Representative Massaroni and I had the opportunity to visit her schools over in Nelson County. Their education collaborative program. Actually got to meet the first adult teacher apprentice in the state, and we had the opportunity to observe. They have the teacher apprenticeship program. We had the opportunity to observe high school students in the classroom, learning about teaching, actually teaching in small groups. Some of them told me they had just taught their first lesson the day or two before. So that is an opportunity that is out there, and maybe at some, if we don't have time today, maybe at some future time we can explore that and learn more about that. So those programs are out there. Representative Decker has a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you all for your presentation. I see that KRS 161.028 requires the EPSB to establish the standards, and you've mentioned that, of obtaining and maintaining teaching certificates in Kentucky. Also on your website, I see that Kentucky is part of the National Association of State Directors of Teacher Education and Certification, and it's an interstate agreement, and that the state accepts recommendations from teacher preparation programs from state accredited colleges and universities in many states. Can you talk a little bit about that and how that works and what you look for?
Yes, Representative. So with this last session, the legislature also adopted the Interstate Teaching Mobility Compact. The compact will allow for a greater mobility for candidates who have certification in another state and are interested in coming to Kentucky. That compact just reached the number of states that had to adopt this summer, and so we are looking for that to be up and running. We had our initial commission meeting virtually this fall, and then we will bring all of the commissioners together from various states. We'll meet in January. Once that is up and running, it will allow member states for individuals to transfer their certificate from one state to another utilizing the compact. However, in the absence of the compact, and even once it's up and running, when an individual has completed preparation at another state and they are looking to obtain certification in Kentucky, we do have a pathway for that. Specifically, it's Regulation 16 KAR 4030, where we are looking at the program of preparation that was completed and the certificate that it would align to in another state. So if it was an approved preparation program for certification in that other state, we would then look to see if it meets the requirements in Kentucky, so that they've completed similar courses around the grade and content, that they have passed the assessments for Kentucky, and then they could be eligible for certification within the state. Now, by statute, if an individual has 2 years of teaching experience in another state, they are exempt from the certification assessment requirements in Kentucky.
Could I ask a follow-up?
Yes, ma'am.
Proceed.
So does this compact mean that, or require that, what you just described, can you deny certification for anyone if they are certified in another state, if for example you find that part of their certification was something that you would not approve of in Kentucky? Is that possible?
Yes, ma'am. So with the compact, and I did have the privilege of serving on the drafting committee for the compact. With that, if an individual is coming to the state and they have character and fitness issues, the state of Kentucky, we are still issuing the certificate to that educator. And so if they have character and fitness issues, they've had action in another state that is concerning to us and would lead us not to issue a certificate, issues with the background check, we do reserve the right to do so through the compact. Additionally, we are not able to issue a certificate that we don't have. So if they've completed and obtained a certificate for a different area of certification, different grade ranges that Kentucky does not offer, we have the ability to issue the closest equivalent certificate, but we don't have to create a certificate.
One more.
One more. We have several
Okay,
more.
thank you.
asking.
And so when I read the on your website that we're part of the National Association of State Directors and Teachers, that's different than this compact. And is there, I guess, have you ever denied certification for someone coming from another state through a program that didn't meet our standards?
Yes, we have had individuals come from other states with levels of preparation that are not on par with Kentucky's requirements, maybe a very low GPA requirement, a testing only, an alternative route to certification that was really limited to that state. Additionally, NASDAQ, which is the National Association of Directors of Teacher Education and Certification. It's a lot easier to call them NASDAQ. They maintain a clearinghouse that reports educator misconduct among the states. So in Kentucky, we report to them anytime an educator has had their certificate denied, suspended, or revoked, and we receive information from other states regarding that as well, so that we are able to deny individuals. For example, if an educator was certified in Tennessee, but had a certificate denied in Tennessee, now they can't teach in Tennessee anymore and may be interested in coming to Kentucky. We would receive that information on the front end and be able to deny their certificate.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for those answers.
Next question is from Senator Titchener.
Thank you guys for being here. Just a quick question. As I look at the numbers from 2018-19 and of certificates that are issued by school year, and we're seeing the shortage in our buildings of teachers in the classroom. Do you have a count of how many certified teachers are leaving the classroom and moving into an administrative role?
We can parse that out. It's a little difficult to track it since they're in the system, and we're trying to get better. The data streams that house the certificate and how they're identified at the school level, they're not meant to talk to one another. I can work on getting you at least a roundabout figure of those transitioning into administrative positions. Can come up with at least just a general number to present to you.
Okay, great, thanks.
Mm-hmm, sure.
On that subject, staff has said that on the information that you're putting together, if you will send that to Yvette here at staff, she'll get that information out to all the members. Next, we have a Representative Truitt.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First off, I want to start off by complimenting EPSB. Over my nearly 25 years of education, you guys have always been very helpful. And I want my colleagues to understand that anytime I've had a question, it was always someone there willing to help and very knowledgeable about the certification. I've pursued option 6. I've also been emergency certified at some point. So I've pursued multiple different paths in education. I do have one request, I guess, and I want to know your all's thoughts on this. With option 6, and let's say, like, for example, this past year I had a position open up, and I had an individual that I asked about a job who had left education, and they had a high school degree. They were certified high school. I needed them in elementary. And obviously you all know where I'm going with this. I could not use that individual. I could pull someone off the street that maybe had a degree in basket weaving, and I could have put them in there, but I could not have used this person that was certified to teach mathematics to teach 5th grade math. So, what's your all's thoughts on that? What do we need to do to fix that? Because I really feel that we've had some people that left, the teaching profession who might come back, maybe a different location, maybe a different area. What's your thoughts?
And thank you, Representative Truitt, for your comments about the board and our staff. We do appreciate that. Also, in regards to the situation that you are discussing, well, yes, you can emergency certify someone with a bachelor's degree. You also have the ability to emergency certify somebody who has a teaching certificate. That is a misconception that we are not sure where it has originated, but we have heard that on occasion that those individuals who are certified to teach cannot be emergency certified in another area. That is incorrect. You can be emergency certified in another area, and the regulation does specify that the emergency certificate that is issued to an already certified teacher does allow them to be paid at the rank of their underlying teaching certificate. So that is a benefit that those individuals off the street are not able to take part of. But with this, while option 6 is for initial certification, so those without an educator preparation background, we do have additional routes that are available. You'll see some numbers in the data that we provided on the proficiency route, which a proficiency evaluation is done at the college or university level to review a candidate's other areas of preparation to see, what coursework they may need to add that additional area of certification. Much like the temporary provisional with option 6, the proficiency does have a proficiency provisional that allows them to serve as the teacher of record while they're completing any requirements to add that area of certification. We also have some additional options that an individual can complete, such as the highly qualified route to be able to add certification down from their original high school certificate. So we would be happy to talk with you more, especially around a specific candidate to help them find the best route to certification for them.
Okay. You mentioned emergency certification.
Yes, sir.
I may be wrong, but if I have other applicants, then I cannot pursue that person with emergency certification. Is that correct?
If you have other qualified applicants, yes. And it does use the term qualified, not certified, because as you know, there may be other reasons that an individual would not be qualified to hold employment in your district.
Okay, thank you.
We have 3 more members with questions. I'm going to cut it off there so we can get on to the rest of our agenda. Representative Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and Cassie, thank you, and other members for the presentation. My background is in education, 32 years, and then 5 years on the Warren County School Board. So this topic is critical to me, and I think it's so important going forward in education. I got a couple of things. One, I think I have some good news and some bad news, and I'll start with the bad news. But I was on 2 superintendent panels over the last 2 or 3 weeks, one in Lexington and one in Bowling Green. And, I like to hear from the boots on the ground what's going on. And one superintendent said he's having to take people, basically walking in off the street to fill positions. And he said they may stay 30 days, they may stay 6 months, they may stay a year, and we never see them again. So you got to go through that same process again. And then one superintendent said the average level of experience at one of his elementaries was 3 years. So that means you've got a lot of people that's first year, second year to average out some of those older teachers. So 3 years of experience. So that concerns me, both of those topics. Dr. Murphy gave me some good information just a minute ago through Jennifer, but I appreciate, and the good news is in teacher certification at Western right now, it's up 30% over the last 5 years. They have 1,167 teacher certification candidates right now and 250 principal leadership candidates. So that is good news. So, we're trying to balance out the bad with the good. So I guess my question, Student teaching, would you recommend that we pay student teachers? Would that help the situation? And then the K-TIP program, am I right that we don't have that anymore? And that was a good program. We had that when I was in education, and that was a really good program, I thought. So your comments on K-TIP and student teaching pay.
Yes, thank you, Representative Jackson. And thank you for the shout out for KTIP because we loved KTIP. It was in operation from 1985 and then was unfunded in 2018. There are some individuals who completed KTIP in its early days where it was very burdensome and a lot of work. Towards the end of the program, the board had really worked to streamline that process and to really focus on the mentoring piece and providing those supports while still tying it to certification and making sure that our candidates are meeting a certain level of preparation and ability to be in the classroom, but really providing them with those supports and growing those relationships to help retention and staying in the classroom. The EPSB is a big proponent of KTIP and bringing back funding for KTIP so that that preparation or that level of program can be handled and available for all school districts and for all of those entering the profession. For student teaching, the board does support incentives to pay those student teachers. I think especially a state level stipend that could offset the cost of student teaching without placing a burden on districts. So your smaller districts that already struggle to recruit student teachers, and we know that oftentimes student teachers stay in the district where they are completing their student teaching. Those with smaller budgets, if there's not a state level stipend for them and you're just paying student teachers out of the district budget, they may have a harder time recruiting those. But I think anything to offset the cost and that time where a student teacher is spending the majority of their day in the classroom but not receiving pay, that can help with recruitment to the profession.
Thank you, Cassie.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Next, we have Senator Higdon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you all for being here today. All your options, with the exception of option 4, mentioned, well, none of the rest of them mentioned participating in teachers' retirement, but number 4 says they cannot. I guess my question is like for option 5 for veterans and other, I guess, people who work in the private sector and then decide to go into teaching. Is there any discussion about allowing those folks to participate in CERS rather than teachers' retirement? Because that is a deterrent to some degree. Because if they vest in teachers' retirement, it can have a fairly negative effect on their Social Security. Any discussion about that?
Not from our office. I would have to defer to the retirement systems for that. I do not have the financial background to be able to speak to that.
Just curious because that is a deterrent to stay long term. So thank you.
For anybody who doesn't know, Senator Higdon's co-chair of the Public Pension Oversight Board. So he's on those pensions. Last question on this section from Representative Timoney.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you all for your presentation today. I apologize for coming in a little late today. And the first question I had, the first statement I wanted to go ahead and make is I also want to echo a lot of Representative Truitt's comments. I am also 25 years in the system, and I've had to call on your office quite a bit over the years. And I want you all to understand, like, you all have changed in a very flexible way. And it is a benefit to teachers. Back in the day, you all were very hard to work with. Very hard to work with. The answer was no lots of times. You've got to go back to school. You've got to get more. And that is not the way it is anymore. And thank you for that, because that's the flexibility I felt was necessary all along. So you all are doing exactly what you need to do. Your commitment to high quality education is also critical. It's the highest quality candidates are the ones we want in the classroom. And those standards you all guard. KTIP was awful in 1999. it changed. I was a K-TIP mentor a little bit later for quite a few teachers, and it changed, and it was so helpful. It was so very helpful just to have a teacher member, admin member, and a university member. I mean, it was really a good system, and it changed, and it was a tremendous support. And with as many options as we have for teachers today, I think that it is imperative that we put some type of a system such as that back in place. Option 4. So I saw the numbers, and they're not huge, 40s, 30s, 40s. And I missed this part of the presentation, so I really shouldn't ask a question about it, but I'm going to anyway.
Just go ahead.
Are those? Can you tell me a little bit about those people? Like, who are those people that are getting that option 4, and how are they being used?
So the most utilized option 4 certificate is really those that are being placed in alternative classroom setting. That is where we see that the most. Now, we also see it in areas of dance and theater because this certificate by statute is only available for part-time employment. So these are individuals who are likely doing something else during the day, maybe retired. But this is only eligible for that part-time employment, and it is only a 1-year certificate that can be renewed, but it doesn't lead to professional certificate. So these are not individuals that are looking to stay in the profession long-term.
This is an area that I see the state of, the Commonwealth really develop for our areas that are a little bit more remote and are having trouble finding computer science teachers. We had the computer science group come and advocate. If we had classroom facilitators of math or science, but we had a virtual engineer talking about some, teaching computer science. Like, I can see us making some pretty big strides that way. That's going to be a pretty innovative approach. And I would love to see KDE kind of jump on board with that and kind of create kind of like a framework for how that would work and start, developing the relationships with the universities and in the private sector in particular to really kind of get some of those challenging, tough to fill, spots filled with those professionals who only want to give 2 hours a day and who can only give 2 hours a day and are not looking at a career choice, but wanting to give back, but can't give up their, don't want to give up their engineering position or their, other role that they're in. So the last thing I would like to say that I actually will be employing option 6 this year coming up. I'm going to go back to school and start working on my superintendent certificate. So I just want to send the message out to any universities. I am open for recruitment, and I will have an official signing day at some point. Thank you, Chairman.
Leave it to Representative Timmon. Could you proceed with the next part of your program on the approval process for teacher preparation quickly, so we'll give time for our university partners? Thank you.
Yes, hi, Melissa Diebel. I oversee accreditation and early literacy efforts. So accreditation for our educator preparation programs, they have 3 options, 2 national options, one through the Council of Accreditation for Educator Preparation, known as CAPE, and second, the Association for Advancing Quality in Educator Preparation, AQUEP. And then they also have a state-only option available, which is based on the CAPE standards. The 2 national accreditors are both CHIA approved, and then our state process lines up to the CHIA approved CAPE. Accreditation is every 7 years, but they do turn in annual reports addressing any AFIs or stipulations that they may have. These are the overall standards. I am not going to read them to you. I'll just say they address several areas. So content and pedagogy, how they recruit students, how students do during student teaching. They monitor qualitative and quantitative data of students as they move through programs. And then they ask EPPs to also report on completer effectiveness in the classroom and involve a lot of stakeholder input from districts and other members of the institution, so arts and science faculty, other faculty, those sorts of things. R just stands for revised. CAPE revised their standards in 2022. A stands for advanced. those would be advanced programs. So those are any programs that come after an initial certification. So if they do library science or anything along those lines. The overall process, they start with 9 months prior to the visit. They complete a self-study report. Those are normally very lengthy, about 80 to 100 pages. And then they can utilize up to 90 pieces of evidence to support their self-study report. If they do both initial and advanced, they can have 135 pieces of evidence. And then they have a formative meeting where they're asked for additional evidence or asked to speak to areas that they think might have some holes. The EPP then submits an addendum with a reply to any areas that may be questioned or if they need additional evidence. So they can submit up to another 50 pieces of evidence that are different from the original. Then we get to the site visit. A site visit takes place over 3 days, usually Sunday through Tuesday. It involves the team, which is made up of educators, people from other EPPs in Kentucky or national ed prep people. Everybody reads through, they can ask questions, they validate instruments and the information found in both reports, corroborate through interviews of stakeholders and students that what was presented is accurate. The team then writes a site visit report, which summarizes any additional information that was received during the site visit. The EPP can write a rejoinder to clarify anything that may be needed for the commission to evaluate. And then the site lead writes a response to that rejoinder, so if they want to clarify anything from there. The accreditation decisions fall to the national accreditors' commissions. And then if they are a state only, it falls to the Accreditation Audit Committee, which is a committee formed by the EPSB and involves members from teachers, principals, and ed prep faculty. The accreditation decisions, they can either be granted a full accreditation, an accreditation with conditions, an accreditation with probation, or they can have their accreditation revoked. The initial review, I kind of discussed this, so this is the self-study, the formative feedback. The difference with this, or what I want to note for this, is an AFI is an area for improvement. This is if there's deficiencies, things like if they don't have 3 cycles of data, if there's inconsistencies or inaccuracies, if you need to further verify things that you weren't able to do while on the site visit, they might be issued an AFI. A stipulation would mean that there was no evidence to show that they met that standard. And AQEP uses slightly different terminology. AQEP uses a concern instead of AFI. So if they say there's a concern, that's a minor shortcoming within that standard. A condition with AQEP is equal to the stipulation. So it addresses, it would mean that there was a significant problem with that standard. With the site visit, like I said, the team comes and summarizes the findings of the interview process, the different pieces of evidence that were brought in. They write a response that will go to the commission and then submit the materials to the commission for review, either at the national level or through our accreditation audit committee. So this is just kind of a little chart here that kind of goes through that as well. And it kind of focuses more. So accreditation with conditions, an institution would have 2 options. So accreditation with conditions might mean that they had some issues that they need to demonstrate effectiveness and to one standard or more. They have 2 options. The first is in 6 months, they can provide written documentation. If the deficiency requires a little more time, they have to implement something, they have to modify something, they can ask for 2 years. After those 2 years, we will do a focused visit, or the national accreditor does a focused visit. The focused visit only looks at the standards where there were stipulations or conditions, and then they make another decision about, do we want to allow them, have they done enough to allow accreditation to continue to their full accreditation, which would typically be 4 years from this time, or do we revoke their accreditation? If an institution is put on probation because they did not meet more than one standard, then in 2 years they go through another full visit where they would look at everything again in depth. And so it looks, I think, and sounds simple the way I'm describing it, but it's a year-long process. So it is, and very in depth. So program approvals, we kind of have 3 levels of program approval. So if an ed prep is brand new, they have never had education preparation, they go through a very intensive process in order to develop an ed prep program. And it typically takes about 2 years from the time they start working with us to develop that program. We are very thorough and go into a lot of depth. The second type of program approval is an established EPP that wants to develop a new program. So they haven't traditionally offered a certain program, and now they want to offer, a PE or health. They might say they want to do that. The final is continued program, and that is just a review of the programs that the EPP currently has that evaluates if they're maintaining the standards that they were when they originally started. So again, a chart that kind of shows the overall process. We do have content reviewers that look at the different program contents. We have a program review committee that follows up with the content review and the EPSB staff's evaluations to determine that whether or not they feel that everything has been looked at. When it's done, it goes to the accreditation audit committee, who then looks at all of this stuff again and holds a vote. And then the final step is to go to EPSB, where they then vote. So the actual people that approve the program review is the EPSB. Okay, so I went fast for you, Representative Tipton.
Thank you, Dr. Deeble. Appreciate that. Now, I believe we have 26 education providers in the state.
We do, and 2 affiliate.
Of those, do you know which accreditation process they've utilized? Is there a particular the national or maybe the state that is more common?
So right now we have 18 institutions that use CAPE, which is the national accreditor. We have 2 that use AQUEP, and then we have 6 that are using the state-only process.
Okay. Just want to make sure I understand all this. You all approve a specific program for the education provider. If they want to add a program, you mentioned health or PE, they go through this process. What role does CPE have in this, and how much coordination is there between what the needs of, say, the K-12 world is through EPSB to the college? Is there discussion, is there coordination there so that the universities understand what the school systems actually need?
So turn my microphone back on. The Council for Post-Secondary Education, the president is also an ex officio member of the Education Professional Standards Board. Amanda Ellis does serve as the designee and attends our EPSB meetings and works with the board. My understanding of the authority of CPE is specific to the public institutions, and so they are reviewing all of those degree programs and setting the standards for that at all of your public colleges and universities. And then the EPSB is reviewing all of the programs at both your private and public institutions for teacher certification. And so we are approving those programs to lead to educator certification. CPE is then approving those for the degree programs as well. I know that CPE does more of a review about the need for those programs within the state. The EPSB, as part of their goals that they're going to review this afternoon, they are looking to review certification requirements, especially in line with workforce needs, and to make sure that our current certifications do align with the needs of our districts.
Thank you. Any other members have any questions? Senator Thomas.
Excuse me. You said there are 26 teacher ed programs approved in the state. Okay, you said 18, 6, and 2. What 2 are only state only approved? What 2 universities?
No, there are 6 that are state only.
Okay, what are they?
I'd have to look. So I have to do this from my head. We have Kentucky Wesleyan. We have Kentucky, or Alice Lloyd College. Boyce. No, Boyce is, sorry, can I get back to you?
Why don't you
I'm trying to remember off the top of my head all 6 of them.
Well, let me ask you this. Are all the 8 state universities, are they approved by some national accreditation?
The other 20 are approved by national accreditation.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Seeing no other questions, thank you for your time, and we may meet again sometime in the future. Appreciate that. If our next presenters could come forward, our next item is discussion on our teacher preparation programs on alignment to early literacy and math requirements. Thank you all for being here today. I appreciate your patience. So just like the last time, make sure the microphones are pulled close to you. Make sure your green light is on. And if you all will please identify yourself for the records, and then I will swear you in.
I'm Elizabeth Dinkins. Oh, is it on?
I don't make the green light needs to come on.
Okay. I'm Elizabeth Dinkins. I'm the Dean of the School of Education at Bellarmine University.
Corinne Murphy. I'm the Dean of the College of Education and Behavioral Sciences at Western Kentucky University.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
I do.
Thank you so much. Please proceed.
I'm going to try to find where our PowerPoint is, if you just give me a second. There you go. Okay. Again, I'm Elizabeth Dinkins. I'm the Dean of the School of Education at Bellarmine University. I'm also the President of the Kentucky Association of Colleges for Teacher Education, which Dr. Murphy and I both sit on that executive board. And we're here in sort of a dual role. We're here to represent our institutions, certainly, but we're also here to represent CACTE with the charge of what happens in educator preparation around literacy and math so that we're preparing the best teachers for Kentucky. The mission of CACTE, I think, is important here because, as you just heard from the previous presenters, Kentucky's got 26 educator preparation programs, institutions across the state, and we're pretty diverse. But CACTE as an organization is very collaborative and unique in the sense that we're all sharing the common mission of preparing high-quality teachers who can serve the students in Kentucky. While we're here speaking for CACTE, it's kind of impossible for Dr. Murphy and I to speak for every institution in Kentucky that prepares teachers. So we're going to share with you some overview guiding factors that all EPPs face when preparing teachers for math and literacy. And then we're going to talk about what our 2 institutions do because we sort of represent both ends of the spectrum. Bellarmine is a small institution. I graduate somewhere between 25 and 30 at a high water mark. I'm looking at maybe between 45 and 50 future teachers between our undergraduate initial certification program and our MAT program. WKU, Dr. Murphy? Yeah.
WKU is the complete opposite end of the spectrum, and so we graduate approximately 300 initial certifications each year, and anywhere between 100 and 150 educational leaders, principals, superintendents, special education directors, et cetera.
So we think by seeing sort of pictures from both our institutions, you'll get a sense of what's happening across the Commonwealth. So what are some common factors that affect teacher preparation in Kentucky? They sort of land into 3 big buckets. One is just a set of standards requirements that we all have. You heard a little bit about this from our colleagues at OELE in the sense that we have to meet a series of standards. I think about what we do in educator preparation as exponential, right? We train teachers and we train educational leaders, but every teacher we train goes out and then works with and affects all of their K-12 students, right? So if I train one teacher, I can expect in that next year that teacher is going to impact anywhere from 30 to 150 students each year that they work. And the standards that guide that, first of all, are the Kentucky academic standards, because we prepare our educators to teach the Kentucky academic standards. So we look at those. But then we have individual specialized area standards in addition to the Kentucky teacher standards, right? So all of us prepare our students to be able to demonstrate proficiency in the Kentucky teacher standards. But in the areas of literacy and math specifically, we prepare our students according to the ILA standards, which is the International Literacy Association, and then the National Council of Teacher of Mathematics standards. And those guide us in terms of those special content areas. We also all have stakeholder input that comes into play at our schools. So this speaks a little bit to the question that Representative Tipton asked, which is, how do we as educator preparation organizations and institutions, how do we stay in touch with what's happening in the K-12 districts that our educators serve? We have stakeholder boards. Part of this is guided by accreditation, but I think most of it is guided by our desire to really serve the areas that our teachers go and work in, right? So we have formalized boards in terms of getting maybe a stakeholder input on regular basis. And then we also have sort of informal input from the cooperating teachers that work with our students, the mentors that work with our students. And then we employ, most EPPs employ people who are teachers in the field as adjuncts as well. So we have a range of input that we're getting from stakeholders. And we also have two partners at the state level. The Office of Educator Licensure and Effectiveness is a partner for us, and we are very collaborative with them. After every EPSB meeting, CACD meets, and members from OELE come downstairs if we're in the Sauer building, and we have a discussion about what's going on and how do we best stay up to date and how do we best inform things moving forward. So we're very collaborative there. Then we also collaborate with the Office of Teaching and Learning in two formal ways, right? We have a Kentucky Academic Standards update every year that our educators across Kentucky attend to and report on, that they've sort of been training as an update. But then we also collaborate with ongoing partnerships. So we'll speak a little bit more to this, but currently in terms of literacy work groups and then forming math work groups as well. And then the last bucket that informs what we do is just the research base. So we all have specialized faculty that are experts in literacy pedagogy and math pedagogy. They're active participants in the research, and we also collaborate across institutions. So one of the things we did this year at KRA, which is the Kentucky Reading Association Conference, there was a pre-conference session where all of the EPPs, literacy educators from the EPPs, were invited, and we gathered together and we said, all right, what are we doing in terms of meeting literacy needs of K-12 students across the state, and how can we share and learn from each other and grow and do better? Jump in. Okay. So just in terms of the actual Kentucky academic standards, so I wanted just to put these in front of you. You're probably familiar, but just in case, there are specific standards that speak to foundational reading skills that include oftentimes what we refer to as the science of reading, right? Or the big five. So phonological awareness, phonics and word recognition, fluency, vocabulary, and comprehension. There's specific standards that all Kentucky teachers have to be aware of to teach, and so we prepare ours to do just that. And then in terms of mathematics, we have a series of practices and a series of content standards that our students are prepared to teach as well. I didn't lay out the content standards because it varies by grade level quite a bit, right? What you're doing in sort of middle school in terms of helping students understand quantitative reasoning and build their number sense, and then what you're doing in high school is very different. But the guiding practices, right, are sort of the same, which is that we want to make sense of problems and persevering in problem solving. We want to build reasoning, models with mathematics, using appropriate tools, precision, that sort of thing. The literacy standards, so these speak to what we have to prepare teachers to do. So these are standards that future teachers need to be able to demonstrate competency in before we let them sort of go into the classroom, right? And those include a foundational knowledge standard, which again explicitly state the big five of reading or the science of reading. It also includes a curriculum and instruction standard, again explicitly talks about the big five of reading, and then assessment and evaluation, because we know assessing students when they're learning reading processes is just as important. And while the standard 3 does not specifically state the big 5 of reading, it certainly implies a direct connection to that because it talks about understanding the strength of assessments, and it also talks about using sort of various assessments in purposeful ways.
And I would relate this work back to Dr. Diebel's presentation earlier around alignment and accreditations. So for each of these standards, you'll see mirroring representations in the national accreditation and the state level accreditation and program review work that we do. So those assessments specifically for Standard 3 would align with the expectations from both the national organizations and our state expectations within that alignment work. And so that series of evidence that we're submitting to those national review boards is consistent with this information here.
So the question of what does that look like in the classroom, right? What happens at WKU and what happens at Bellarmine, right? Well, we both have multiple courses. I'm just going to talk about Bellarmine and I'll let Dr. Murphy talk about WKU. We have multiple methods courses that focus on literacy education at Bellarmine, both at the bachelor degree, the undergraduate degree, and then at the master's, the MAT degree. Within those multiple methods courses, we make sure there's a strong alignment between our syllabi, the texts, and the assessment they're using, that there's explicit connection to the big 5 of reading, right, or the science of reading. We also expect our students through their clinical placements to implement reading lessons. And we do that both at the practicum level and then again at the student teaching professional semester level so that they can see what's happening in the classrooms and then apply that as well. Examples of some of the assessments that we use, because we understand that reading instruction is not just about teaching grade level developmental texts, right? That would be great if that was what teachers were really tasked to do. But where the rubber hits the road is also through students who struggle, which means that every teacher of reading needs to be armed with the appropriate assessments to understand what's going on when kids don't get it. And so we focus on the assessment component and then helping our students not only know what these assessments are for and how to administer the assessments, but then how to analyze the data they're getting from the assessment and shift to next instructional steps, right? Whether that's a whole class instructional step or a tier 2 or even a tier 3 instructional step. So we do that through case study work that we expect in our program. And so I've also provided a list of assessments that we train our teachers to use. So we train them to use the phonological awareness screening test, which is known as the PAST. We train them to use a series of phonics screeners. We use the multidimensional fluency scale, and then curricular-based measures. We expose them to really specific ones, and then we give them practice opportunities through our partner schools. But the interesting thing at Bellarmine is that my students serve lots of different schools when they graduate. So about 50% of my graduates stay in the Louisville area and serve Jefferson County Public Schools, which is the big district right there. The other 50% are split. Some of them go to parochial systems, some of them go to suburban systems, some of them go to rural systems throughout the state, and some of them go out of state, right, because they come from out of state. The assessments that we train them on, they may not have access to when they actually get in and are employed in the field, right? So one of the things we try to keep a hold of is what's happening in the schools and what do they have access to. But I think that that's a really important thing to consider is that there's the instructional context that our students are going into, which are very diverse because we know Kentucky's schools are very diverse and the instructional resources they have access to are diverse. So it's not like because I train everybody on the past, it's not me, it's the faculty that do early literacy at Bellarmine. I'm an adolescent literacy person. Because Bellarmine trains them on the past, it doesn't mean that all students that they go to teach in the future have access to that assessment, right? Because it's the instructional context they move into. They may have access to other strong assessments, it's just different.
So I'll build on what Dr. Jenkins has brought forward for you all as far as Western Kentucky University. So in addition to courses and making sure that the Big Five are very explicit in multiple points of instruction and application within our programs, we have the literacy theme built across our entire teacher certification programs, meaning that there are a set of objectives that our candidates receive throughout the whole program. And in each of our courses, literacy and the application of literacy themes, so literacy in mathematics, literacy in financial awareness, that concept is brought forward through the whole program. We also focus, of course, on the Big Five in reading as far as the scope and sequence of acquisition. So it is a developmental approach where you have exposure, then you have review, application, and then generalization in the larger school settings. So they're able to independently engage the Big Five and identification of and teaching students to progress through those Big Five concepts within their scope of their classrooms and their field experiences. We do all this in alignment with school districts. I will not forget in 2018 when I was very new to Kentucky and to Western Kentucky specifically, a phone call where I picked up the phone and said, "Are you the dean?" Yes. Well, this is the superintendent of Hardin County Schools. And so we had a lovely conversation around her students and reading and what her teachers needed as far as reading. We've done that with any number of things. Google, for example, we use Google Classrooms in our schools, but Google Classrooms is not something that's consistent with our universities. And so we incorporate the very specific context, as Elizabeth was speaking, from the schools into our teacher preparation programs. And so where we have with alignment with the districts, just this year, the larger KDE identified 6 reading programs that districts would have to choose from in the coming years. We have those materials now at our university. Our faculty are working with our students to analyze those programs, to look for the Big Five within the context of those programs, and how that really aligns with evidence base in the reading discipline as a broader scientific theme. We also have a very specific literacy clinic at WKU where our university students go into our schools and provide Tier 3, which is the maximum, most intensive intervention for learners who are struggling with specific aspects of their reading. And so we have that literacy clinic. Those students are very engaged. And then we have an MAE, a master's degree in literacy itself. And so that's our version of implementing educator preparation and literacy within our programs.
So when it comes to math, NCTM, the National Council of Teacher Mathematics, is the specialized professional organization for teachers. And much like Kentucky has a set of academic standards that reflect practices and content, NCTM has a set of standards for preparing middle and secondary teachers. They don't have standards for preparing elementary teachers outlined as such, but in terms of the mathematical content and processes, that's a K-12 range as well. You'll see that these really are about both conceptual understanding, procedural understanding, right? And then the tools that help support that through math. When it comes to our classrooms and the way we operate that, much like with the literacy format, we use methods courses and content courses. So this is where here at Bellarmine, not only do we have math methods courses for our K-12 educators, but we also work very closely with our colleagues across the street, our colleagues in arts and sciences, and we have specialized math courses that they take in the education program, Math 101, 102, depending on the grade level, where that content is really specifically aligned to what teachers need to know in terms of mathematical content that they'll be teaching. And again, we have syllabi, textbooks, and assignments that are all anchored in those standards.
Could I stop you right
absolutely.
there? I have a member request who has to leave but wants to ask a question.
Please do.
Senator Williams.
I just had a long discussion with a math teacher at the middle school level at a very successful school, very successful math teacher. But she said one of the things that she was dealing with was that in the elementary level, they were teaching tricks and not actual math, okay? And so the students would arrive and they do well on these tests. but they knew tricks. And by the time it got to algebra, you actually have to know math, not tricks. And she sometimes had a hard time understanding the tricks that were being taught. And my wife was a trained teacher. And one of the reasons that we started homeschooling, because when she was an elementary school teacher, they were being taught tricks, how to teach tricks. And it was harder to understand some of these tricks in the actual math. So my question is, where are we on that? Are we now teaching actual math, or are we teaching tricks?
So I'm going to share a little bit of an anecdote. I'm going off script. I just had the pleasure of observing our math methods teacher, just serendipitously a couple of weeks ago. And one of the things I saw her doing is actually teaching the math and not the tricks. And what's interesting is I think tricks, for lack of a better word, have been used in math quite a bit. I'm a literacy person, so I think the tricks are what I know, right? So some of our undergraduates that she was working with, as she was having them think through different strategies for solving elementary-based problems, they were relying on tricks. And they were like, well, you just do these things. And she kept saying, but conceptually, what does that mean? Right? What does it mean? A very simplistic example was, when they were looking at what she kept calling the instrumental approach for sort of complicated multiplication, they would say, you carry the 8 or you carry the 1. And she was like, you're carrying 8,000. And that conceptually is very different, right? And so I think that is something that our math educators are really working towards right now. But you articulated a tension that's actually, I think, also present in the standards when they're talking about conceptual understanding is what we're really pushing people to do. Yes. Because that helps with higher level thinking.
And sometimes that's harder to test for in these tests, but the teachers are accountable to the test. So anyway, thank you very much. I'm glad to hear we're doing that.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Sorry for the interruption, Dr. Dinkins. Please proceed with your presentation.
No, that's a great question. Thank you for it. So in terms of, we do request in terms of clinical placements as well, we ask that our teachers do a math lesson as well, both at the practicum and we hope at the student teaching. We require it at the practicum level. At the student teaching level, we sometimes can't require it. It depends on sort of what's being observed when. We know that they are doing math lessons in the student teaching, but whether or not that's the formal assessment for their final observation is a different thing. And then in terms of an example of the kind of work, and I think this speaks to the question we just received, we ask our students to do a lot of task analysis work where they analyze tasks that students are given and then create tasks to give students in the same way. And that this really pushes conceptual understanding, quantitative and abstract reasoning, what's the use of appropriate tools, how do you model with kind of real world mathematics, and then the attention to precision, which is very, very important in math and needs to start very young. The example of you carry a 1 versus you carry 1,000, for example, is pretty important. Procedurally, when you're doing math, you might think, I just carry that 1 up there. But conceptually, you need to know, is it a 1? Or is it a 10? Or is it 1,000? Right? Because that has to do with like the deep conceptual understanding and number sense that students are building at a young age.
So I think one of the other parts to consider is that we're also working with students who perhaps have grown up in environments that have promoted their anxiety related to mathematics or provided them alternative strategies to get to the final answer. And so we're working in two senses. One is to make sure that their own knowledge of math and math content is sourced in conceptual knowledge and that they're able to complete math themselves using that same conceptual knowledge. But then the pedagogical side. And so we have courses that are meant to address the conceptual knowledge itself for those candidates, as well as pedagogical courses on how to make sure that our candidates are using practices that will make sure that our next generation of students will be also grounded in that same conceptual understanding of mathematics and not the tips and the tricks. And so I think that's to points 1 and 2 here for Western Kentucky University. That's a great transition. We have some additional opportunities as well as far as an elementary mathematics endorsement. This is an endorsement that goes beyond the initial certification in elementary education and requires additional coursework in implementing advanced mathematics within our elementary schools for our advanced learners. Our SkyTeach program is a national model program based off of what's called UTeach. It's a science and mathematics education, pedagogy, and preparation program. And that program has been in existence for about 20 years at this point. We get calls from HR directors and principals all the time about, do you have any SkyTeach graduates? The reason for that is this program is fully embedded in the schools. Our students are doing and leading experiments and mathematics content lessons in our schools. They have hundreds of hours in the schools before they actually graduate from Western Kentucky University. We also do specialized praxis tutoring. We recognize that not all teachers are going to be able to complete the praxis related to mathematics for a variety of reasons, especially our option 6 or our candidates that are coming to us from staff of existing school districts. So we'll get a call from a principal or a superintendent that says, I would love for this teacher that I have to be able to pass the math praxis, but they can't pass this particular area of the math praxis. And so we partner with them. They may not be a university student per se, but they are part of our service to the school districts in providing staff praxis tutoring. And so that has helped any number of teachers get their math certification to teach, especially in the secondary programs. And sometimes they're not teaching the advanced content that is on that praxis exam. And so that is a helpful support for our school districts. We also have a variety of research methods in math and science education. We have researchers, pedagogical experts, as well as content experts in those areas focused on math and science within our schools. And then we have internships opportunities for students in community-based educational enrichment programs. And so our students are very much engaged actively in the practice of teaching mathematics in the region.
So now that we've given you a standards look, just a little bit of a deeper dive on sort of our stakeholder collaborations. So we do really pay attention to what our partner districts need and the instructional context that our students are going into, right? And that's the clinical experiences, their cooperating and mentor teachers, grade level content teacher needs, curricular resources, formalized partnerships to build capacity sort of with in-service teachers. At Bellarmine, we have 2 formal stakeholders groups. One meets 2 to 3 times each semester, and they look at the data of our program. They look at curricular revisions. They look at the textbooks that we're using. They talk to us about the needs that they have, and we use their information to sort of shape the programs and the way it works. And then we also have a formal advisory committee that gives a big picture overview of what are longer term needs happening in districts. Those are formal things that we do on a regular basis that really help us understand what's happening in districts. Because we have a diverse set of districts that we serve, those are diverse groups as well. The Office of Teaching and Learning right now from CACTE, we all participate in the annual Kentucky Academic Standards Update, as I mentioned, and the letters training, which OTL has been really generous enough to offer EPPs to join. We have had a pretty robust participation. We had 8 institutions participate in Cohort 1 training and 12 in Cohort 2. So that's 20 of the 26 institutions you've heard about in Kentucky that are doing letters and engaging in letters. And that's a really collaborative process as well. I know that the faculty member that I have that's been part of that, returns and says, hey, this is what we're doing and this is something that helped me think differently. The good news is that it wasn't radically different than things we were already doing at Bellarmine, which was really nice for me to hear. And then we are very collaborative with the Office of Education Licensure and Effectiveness. The literacy work group that Ms. Diebel leads has 17 EPPs that are part of it, that have done everything from take a series different praxis exams to see what should a new assessment in Kentucky be, to actually submit syllabi and do syllabi review. And then we're developing a math collaborative working group as well. Melissa Diebel's shop is developing that. And through CACTE, we're gathering EPPs to be part of it.
I think one of the opportunities for partnership that was referenced earlier today, especially within the context of stakeholder collaborations, is further extending the opportunity for partnership between school districts and EPPs through the induction programming. So you heard a lot at this point about all of the ways in which we align our standards. We assure that our content that's delivered to our students, our next generation of teachers, is the most up to date, it's the most scientific, and it is the most engaged within our schools. But we lose a connection with our students upon graduation and in their initial year. 2 years at the school district. We really like an opportunity to re-engage that pathway. It directly impacts retention. So we have all this work, and I think earlier we did some math around how much funding was going to one particular kind of pathway and one particular kind of teacher candidate. Well, these are years of investments that we're making in our Kentucky undergraduate and graduate students. And our faculty, our staff, and educators all across the state are involved. And every time we lose a teacher to some other professional opportunity, it is a loss for all of us. And so really re-engaging that very close tie from undergraduate and graduate initial preparation into the first 2 to 3 years of a teacher's professional career in their school district is really important to making sure that these content standards are applied in the evidence-based way that they were taught originally. And that part can be lost in the tyranny of the urgent. And I think you all know much about the tyranny of the urgent and how it distracts us. But with some focused, structured opportunities to really make sure that generalization of the skills that were taught as part of the pedagogical practice in the undergraduate and graduate initial prep programs can be applied, we will end up with an even stronger base of next generation of teacher leaders. So that's an opportunity.
Yeah, and that's all we have, so thank you.
Thank you for your presentation. We do have some questions. Representative Bojanowski.
All right, yes, thank you. So my question is about textbook selection, and so specifically for courses to teach reading. What is the process? I was talking to a professor at a different university, and she was saying that she doesn't just get to pick her textbook and that some courses have to be approved by EPSB. I wasn't sure if that was true, but just what would be the process for a professor selecting a textbook for a course to teach reading?
So I do not believe that EPSB has to approve any of our textbooks. Faculty have the purview of selection of the textbooks, right? And I think that's a very good thing, because when we talk about things like the science of reading, they're aware of the texts that are most effective and that students are going to be most receptive to, right? So a textbook, it sits at an intersection of what is being taught and what is being sort of received and how students are engaging with it. So it is a kind of complicated decision. And I actually I would expect that there would be different textbooks used across all of the EPPs because we have different kinds of students going to those EPPs. But yeah.
And in a model where the EPP is very large, we're working to consistently apply these standards across thousands of students at any given time. And so there's many faculty involved in that conversation. And so we actually have working groups based off of courses that will talk together around what are course textbooks that are consistent with the standards and the objectives of those courses. And that's how textbook selection is made. Mm-hmm.
Next question is from Senator Thomas.
Thank you, Chairman Tipton. Excuse me. Dr. Dinkins and Dr. Murphy, you are teaching students who are going to train young people who are likely going to live through the remainder of this century and into the next century. So what you're doing is extremely important work for the future of our country and the future of our world. What I'm curious about is what are you doing in the AI space as you train teachers? More particularly, how are you using AI to train these individuals who are going to be here throughout the 21st century into the 22nd century in terms of educating them? Okay. And I think Dr. Murphy hit it on the head when she said we're using Google with respect to some of the ways we're training teachers. So please share with this committee and all of us how you're using AI to train teachers who are going to educate our Americans for the rest of the century and beyond. I want to hear it from you. I want you to start first, Dr. Murphy.
Okay, so it's a fantastic question, obviously, and very pertinent to what we're doing. We're at a point, and it's an inflection point because the receiving and the action on new AI, because we've had AI for a long time, right? We've had AI in a variety of different spaces for quite a long time, but the generative AI that is now available to the broader community, we're at the inflection point of receiving and learning it ourselves at the same time that we are helping our next generation of teachers and K-12 students receive it and learn it. And so the first approach is to make sure that we're not fearing it. And so we've got a university level initiative where we are learning, growing, and consuming as much information around the application of generative AI within the higher education space. And then we are looking at that from the College of Education and Behavioral Sciences specific to pedagogy and the implementation of AI within the pedagogical space. And so we have our literacy and our LIGHT faculty. LIGHT stands for Library Information Technology and Analytics. Glad I got that right. We always just call it LIGHT. But those faculty specialize in technology and the application of technology in our teaching spaces. And so those faculty have been working for the last 12 months to twofold incorporate generative AI and best practices within our college, but two, also provide professional development opportunities for our current generation of teachers who are out in the schools to learn how to work with it immediately within their classrooms. It is something that is not, the answer is not just today. The answer is continual, and this is going to be a large proportion of our work in the next decade and coming decades because it's gonna change faster than we can even imagine that it's changing right now. So it's all in. And we're excited about it. And that's the thing. Originally, I think there was some fear. There was fear that there was going to be copious amounts of cheating, and there was never going to be such thing as authentic work product anymore. And that's just not the case. We have to help people understand how to incorporate good practices and effective practices in AI in order to make things better for the next generation. And so we can do that, and we're actively doing that right now.
And I'll say that what we're doing sort of mirrors what they're doing on a much smaller scale. So at Bellarmine University, we've had some professional development, and we've got a core group of faculty that are looking at like, what does AI mean for higher ed? I think embracing it and not being afraid of it is key. And that also takes a core group of early adopters, right, to step up to the plate and do that work. Because it is very easy for a teacher just to be like, oh no, we've just opened the floodgates for cheating, right? We don't want AI to lead to a lot of plagiarism. But having a core group of faculty that are really investigating it and thinking about how they can use it is important. Because I am a small but mighty school, I don't have a core department in the School of Ed, but I have some core faculty leaders that are really starting to play with it and doing it simultaneously with the students in their classrooms, right? So I have one faculty member who is trying to create as many PowerPoint presentations as she can through AI as an experiment so she can share it with her students in her methods class to be able to. And so I observed her as well. This is different than the math professor. I observed her and she said, this whole PowerPoint was created through AI. And as she went through it, she talked about the pros and cons that went with it so that these future educators could think about how it could be a tool, but also how it's not fail-safe in the process. And then I've also had some writing methods professors do the same sort of thing where they've asked AI to generate model texts. When you teach writing, you use a lot of student writing as a model text. And so they used AI to generate that and then shared that with their students. So we're just sort of dipping our toes into it, but I think that that's a really important question you asked, Senator Thomas, and we'll be dealing with it for a long time to come.
Thank you both, Dr. Murphy, Dr. Dinkins.
Next, we have Representative Timoney.
Thank you, Chairman. Two quick questions. First, do you all keep a medium in which to keep contact with your graduates, your alumni? Do you have like a listserv or?
We have multiple listservs, and we do our best to keep in touch with them. Teachers oftentimes move from school to school, so it can be hard to do that. But I mean, yes, we do, and I would say that we're always trying to get better at it. Yeah.
Reason why I ask, I think that would be a very valuable tool for us to even utilize when we are crafting legislation about teacher prep. What are they seeing? Like, what are they seeing when they're out there at 1 year, at 2 years, at 3 years? Has it changed? Or, are you stronger? That type of thing. And my second question is, do you track them as far as where they go? Because ultimately, in this room, our objective is you all pump out the teachers and they stay in the Commonwealth. But that's not the case.
So let me be clearer in the answer I gave you the first time. Yes, we do track them to the best of our ability. And we work with OELE to do that because they help us sort of keep track of their licensure and where they are. So we have a process that we go through at the midpoint of each year. We'll start engaging in it actually in January, where we begin for the last 3 years to get the graduates to identify where they are as best we can. We work with our alumni affairs. We reach out to OELE when they can give us names. We have sometimes been known to scan and search social media to be able to update things. Our accreditation requires that we follow our graduates for up to 3 years. And so we do that. I wish I could say I had 100%. I knew where they all were. I think I'm shooting generally between 65 and 85% each year. But certainly we could help give you access to that or help give you access to the graduates that are on our stakeholders committees.
And I think one data point would be people who have gone through your programs that became certified that are not teaching. Like they never even tried. Like, why not? Like, what did they... I know I went through a teacher prep program and I started working in retail, and a principal called and said, "Hey, I've got a long-term sub." And I said, "No, I'm good." And then when I told my parents, my dad said, "Call them back. That's not what we paid for school for you for."
I will say two things in this space. One, social media has certainly helped us, but it also keeps us on our toes. We have to maintain the current social media. By the way, our current generation does not use Facebook. So if we're on Facebook thinking that that's the point of contact for our graduates, it's not. So we actually employ social media experts who help us do that work and keep track of students. But one of the things I think that we have lost over the last couple of decades is the idea that educator preparation and the education majors that exist at the universities actually prepare students for life, and they prepare students for any number of careers. Several of you here were educator preparation majors. We have lawyers who started in that educator preparation space. I would love for educator preparation to, yes, graduate the next generation of teachers, but also to recognize that it is an opportunity to grow leaders and to grow community change elevators. And those folks could equally recruit people into the education space and education majors. And so I try to work with worried parents who are like, this is pigeonholing my child into one career. It's really not. We have so many examples of successful education majors across all of our professions. Of course, we want them in teaching. We absolutely want them in teaching. But I think there are opportunities to elevate education as a first choice major with the idea that it's the skills and dispositions that you leave your undergraduate or graduate education preparation programs with that really prepare you to be an excellent next generation professional.
And ma'am, would you mind describing a little bit about the number of graduates that leave? Because I know for a fact that when I was a principal and I had some trouble staffing my school, I took a personal day and I drove down to Bowling Green, and I was a guest speaker talking about classroom presence and management. And that was so nice of me to do that. No, I was recruiting. It wasn't about me giving to the students. It was me finding out who I needed to, hey, we've got a position open. Mm-hmm. Top of the 25 students in there, 20 of them were heading to Nashville, period. Like, can you comment on your numbers?
I think that's a unique moment. I can't say that I think 80% of our students are going to Nashville. I know that 90% of our students teach within our 100-mile radius of Western Kentucky University. That does include Nashville. It does include JCPS. Actually, JCPS is our top recruiter. The majority of students who graduate out of Western Kentucky University will have their first jobs within JCPS. I think that might be a function of how many jobs are available in JCPS. But I will say that the space in which we graduate and recruit into school districts, we've been doing some concerted efforts to help districts recruit those students earlier. And so it used to be that we had teaching fairs, and we still have teaching fairs where school districts can come and recruit and talk about their districts. These are conversations between current student teachers and the district. Many student teachers already have jobs at this point, though. They're recruited so much earlier. And so what we started doing is actually doing student teaching recruitment fairs, where we invite districts to Western Kentucky University to recruit our current students to select their district as the place of student teaching, so that Monroe County can have the same opportunity to recruit someone to student teach in their district as Warren County does, even though Warren County is direct adjacent, while Monroe County is several counties away. And so we've opened the doors really to access our current students so that school districts, especially those who are more rural, can come to the university and really talk about the benefits of working in a smaller community and the meaningfulness that it is to be a member of that community. And so we've had some districts very successfully recruit student teachers who have then become their next teachers. So we're excited about that model. That's in its second year.
The game definitely has changed with teacher recruitment, hasn't it?
100%.
I mean, it's the power rests in a different entity in the equation. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Representative Tim. Final question, this segment from Senator Titchener.
I think this will be a simple one. Thank you guys for being here and for what you do for our future teachers. So with the change in requirements from KDE after SB 156 last session, you mentioned the 6 reading programs that you are required to pick from. Do you happen to know what those reading programs are off the top of your head?
I do not, but my literacy faculty do. But we can absolutely get those for you. And it's not, our faculty are not required to use them, but they are absolutely using them and helping our students digest them so that, and I think this goes to Dr. Dinkins' point earlier today, we don't know what districts will have available for our students when they become those teachers in those districts. And so what we do is we prepare them with the content and the knowledge so that they can look at a text, they can look at a curriculum and say, here are the learning components that I know lead to third grade reading. And they're able to dissect curriculum so that no matter what school district they receive their first job offer from and are actually employed, they're able to be successful there. So those 6 are great to identify and work within that scientific context of saying analytically, how will this work when I'm a teacher? So.
Thank you all for being here today. Appreciate your presentation. I'm sure we will have future conversations. Members, we have 7 administrative regulations on the agenda. For those who maybe aren't as familiar with this, we are not required to take any action on these. If we take no action, and staff will correct me if I get this wrong, if we take no action, those regulations will go in force. We can ask that the agency amend those regulations, or we can find those regulations deficient. Do any of the members, and we should have agency people here to answer questions, do any of the members have questions on any? Representative Bojanowski.
All right, just real quickly, I had a chance to look through the ones that I was just emailed. On 11 KAR 15040, I don't see what the change in the regulation is.
We have anybody here from Kia to discuss that?
And this is on Key's Scholarship
Yes.
Award Determination Procedure.
Please identify yourself for the record, then I will swear you in. Make sure your microphone's on.
It always gets me. Sorry.
It's all right.
I'm Becky Gilpatrick, Director of Student Aid for Kia.
Miles Justice, General Counsel for Kia.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give the truth, whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
All right, thank you so much. Please proceed.
Yeah, the change that is in this regulation has to deal with calculation when students are part-time for a semester. And it's really a clarification. It's no change to the process that we've always had, but we have inserted that the maximum amount for the semester is 1/2 of the annual award amount. And then we calculate from there on the proration.
Thank you.
Any other member have a question on this proposed regulation or any of the other regulations? Go ahead there, Representative.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On the proposed regulation,
Could you pull the mic a little closer to you, please? Thank you.
on the proposed regulation 7065, the designation of agent to manage middle and high school interscholastic athletics.
Okay, we need somebody. We have somebody here from, I assume that
Phone
is
today.
maybe KHSAA. Is anybody here to discuss that regulation? Everybody's going to get a chance to talk today. Again, please identify yourself for the record. And for those who have not been sworn in, I will swear you in after that.
Cassie Trueblood, representing Kentucky Department of Education.
I'm Julian Tackett with the High School Athletic Association.
Chad Collins, General Counsel with the Kentucky High School Athletic Association.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, sir.
Thank you so much. Please proceed. Could you?
I apologize. We could not hear the question.
Could you repeat that question, Representative Brown?
My question, can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Okay. On the proposed change of regulation dealing with managing middle and high school interscholastic athletics, what is this regulation concerning? Or what is the change?
There are a number of changes that have occurred in the last 18 months, both due to legislative action and due to other regulations, and these simply marry those up. There's nothing of substance, quite frankly, and I know Mr. Collins has been with the ARS committee and a couple of other committees, and most of it was just polishing up post-pandemic. There was nothing nothing further restrictive, certainly.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Any other members? Senator Titchener.
In regards to 5020 and 5010 regarding healthcare program incentives and healthcare training scholarships, is there somebody here?
There we go. Again, please identify yourself for the record, and I'll swear you in.
Sure. Travis Powell, Vice President, General Counsel for the Council on Post-Secondary Education.
Please raise your right hand. You swear or affirm testimony you're about to give the truth, whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
Thank you for being here. Could you give me the update on 5020, the change, and also 5010 regarding healthcare program incentives and training scholarships?
So the change that we made to the regulation was around the eligible programs. So we had originally defined it as a program that was either licensed by the Council on Post-Secondary Education or the Commission on Proprietary Education. But based on actually it was an informal comment. This was an agency amendment, so we ended up doing it on our own. But we got an informal comment from some of the eligible programs that were listed in the statute, and those programs are like certifications for emergency medical technicians. Those don't necessarily go through the council or the Commission on Proprietary Education. So we wanted to make sure that they were included. But to ensure that those were covered, to make sure those were legitimate programs, we added a piece later in the regulation that talked about as long as they provide the program, but it also has to lead to licensure in the state for that individual program. So if they're offering the program, the graduates of those programs actually need to be licensed in those specific areas so they can practice in the state.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Appreciate your participation. Y'all been reading. Anybody else? Representative Decker. Good. Okay. Any other members? Any member wish to take any action? If not, the regulations will stand. I appreciate everybody's participation. I remind your members you have some information in your packet from the Kentucky Center on Mathematics. This is a follow-up to an earlier presentation they made in session. And I do have one more piece of business I want to attend to. We have a member here today who I believe will be attending his last interim joint committee meeting on education. Representative Weber is leaving the General Assembly, take a position with the State Treasurer's Office, and I just want to thank him for his service to this committee and his service to the Commonwealth. Thank you, Representative Weber. No other action. This meeting's adjourned.